Good morning. I'm getting ready to go leave for the library. Also, it's Saturday today, not the usual day that I start vlogging, but the reason that I'm starting to vlog today is because I'm taking my first practice exam for step 2/level 2. And I want this exam is super early because it's only the middle of February, but I really wanted to get a baseline for myself now. I'm 70% through UWorld, not really far through True Learn, but now I'm like working on implementing a lot of those questions. I am in Psych right now. I finished all my OB questions, but I still have OB coming up, and I didn't touch Peds yet. Peds is my last rotation, so I still have a ways to go, but because I finished a decent amount of questions, I just want to see where my baseline is, see where my weak spots are at, so I can start hitting them early. And by that, I've only done UWorld and Anki, so I think what I'm going to start doing is the weaknesses that I find, start actually watching videos on them, and then, I don't know, taking notes, doing more Anki, stuff like that. I haven't really fully thought ahead of that yet, and I also am not a very good test taker, and the way I think set myself up the way I think I set myself up for success is I just take a lot of these exams. That's what I did for step 1 and complex 1. I just pretty much took almost every exam that was offered, and at that point I just got to the point where I would read the question and I would almost like recognize what the test takers were asking me. So I was a lot better at figuring out the patterns, and I think that really helped fill in those gaps as not a very good standardized test taker for me. So that's the plan for step 2 and complex 2, since these guys are a little bit more important since they're scored. So I'm going to be trying to take as many exams again as are offered. That's why I would rather start early than have to be taking a practice exam every single week. Right now I sparse them out to one every 2 weeks, but I might add or subtract and all that stuff. But yeah, so I'm headed over to the library now, meeting Alex and John, and we're gonna take the first practice exam, and it's UWorld, so definitely gonna get my butt kicked because UWorld's always just heinous, but let's do it.
Okay, but like, how impressive is this upside down hang?
It's been absolutely freezing for the last 2 weeks. I just got to my psych rotation. I'm presenting today on a topic, which is major depressive disorder, and I thought it was going to take me like 20 minutes to do the presentation because there's only so much you can say. Turns out that with specifiers to MDD, which there's 8 of, the presentation took me like 2 hours to complete. Specifiers are like MDD with atypical features, MDD with psychotic features, MDD with melancholic features. Also super happy, today's Friday, another week of psych complete. All I have to do is do the presentation, round some patients, and I should be free. That is 100% the attending parking lot because those are some of the nicest cars. That entire parking lot, when it fills up, is Audis, Mercedes, BMWs, Maseratis, Porsches. I had pretty mixed feelings about psych once I started my rotation. It really put me in a type of funk, and it was so weird to me because I always really loved psych. Psych is one of those subjects that I've been interested in since like as long as I can remember, and I have a psych minor, and I like my favorite classes in college were criminal psych and behavioral psych. It's like one of the reasons that I wanted to go into law originally was because I really liked the behavioral and psychological aspect of it. And so when I got here, I thought I was really going to enjoy it, but I think I just got so caught up in people's emotions and like the mental turmoil that they go through, and I don't know, maybe I didn't approach it in the right way as a provider. Maybe I was being too empathetic. I don't know. I don't really know what happened to me, but that was the reason that I didn't really film these last 2 weeks. I almost like fell into a bit of like a sad, like apathetic state. I think I was probably just taking the emotions that I was feeling at the hospital to home, and so all I really wanted to do when I got home was to like study and then not really interact or anything. But today I feel like my love and my well-being was reignited. I was supposed to present today, didn't get to present today. We spent the entire hour of the morning going over a case, and we had an attending come in who we've heard a lot about. She's known to be like pretty harsh on students, expects a lot, just like drives a hardship. And so we were basically intimidated into what this morning was going to look like, but it was really, really fun. And I think she went lighter on us than she does on the residents, because majority of us have only been there for a week or two. So we are also still kind of just learning and getting the whole lowdown on how the rotation goes. But it was really cool. She basically pimped us on every part of the student's slide and made us really critically think. And that's what I think she kind of like pulled the provider out of me more than just someone who's like empathetic to the patient and watching them go through all their emotions like on the side while they're here. So it was more of like a critical analysis. I think that's the best way I can describe it. Like she made me approach it more as a provider than like a friend and a regular person. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I really enjoyed getting pimped by her. Got a ton of things wrong. There were a lot of things that I didn't know, but it was just such a good way to think about things, and the way she explained certain things and told us to like look at certain things and how we were looking at things wrong, or we saw it too literally, and the questions that we were supposed to ask and how we're supposed to be 2 steps ahead and like predicting what it might be or what might be causing a certain way of like behavior. It was very interesting. She did a really fantastic job, and so the whole being grilled by her didn't even matter because of like the way she pulled the information out of us. So that was a very enjoyable morning, and I feel like after that I went on rounds with that same mindset, and rounds were a lot less emotionally taxing. And the first week I was on the voluntary and volunteer unit. The second week, this week, I was on the involuntary only unit. So I feel like this probably is the most taxing one that students are allowed to go to, but I'm happy with how this week went. Just came back from Psych, had a weirdly very productive day today. Finished the case report that I'm presenting tomorrow. I'm presenting a total of 3 presentations this week. I gotta go over all 3 of them and just make sure they're all finished and sent out and ready for presentation. First, a midday coffee, because I feel like once I start doing questions, I'm gonna fall asleep. Today was my last day on the Pediatric Psychiatry unit, and I'm really gonna miss it. I think this was by far the best week on Psych, and I think the next 3 weeks I have aren't going to compare. Psychiatry in pediatric populations and the way it presents in children is just very interesting, and I feel like it keeps throwing me for a loop. Like, there was a patient that we had that was hearing voices, and immediately the first thing that you think of when you think of an adult that's hearing voices, because adults are all I've seen prior to this is schizophrenia or that type of disorder. But the more the attending talked to her, the more he came to the realization that because of the stress, the pressure from school, and the voices that the child was hearing was when, mostly in the period that she was going to sleep and then the period that she was waking up. And so he concluded that it was most likely hypnagogic hallucinations induced by the stress from the day, which was very interesting, and I don't know if I would have come to that same conclusion. And then another patient that we saw today was also hearing voices, so I was trying to keep my mind open as to the fact that it could be something different than schizophrenia, because children just have a much harder time understanding and explaining what they're experiencing. Adults have a better grasp and can just like put into words better what they're experiencing, so it's easier, almost like a little easier to come to the diagnosis. But a child might hear a voice and not realize that it's just a voice in their head, like their internal monologue, or that it's like a dream, or so it doesn't necessarily have to be schizophrenia. But this child was very interesting because she was having multiple voices in her head to the point where the voices were actually given names. This is my first time meeting her, so I think we still don't know exactly what it is, and it's a pretty young child, but we did conclude that it could be a schizophrenic tendency just because of the things that she told us. Just like listening to them, interviewing them is so interesting. And the other thing that I really loved about pediatric psychiatry is that children they're so vulnerable, and they're so like genuinely curious, and they really want to get better. Like they're scared, they don't have no idea what's happening, they're in a new hospital environment, and they're just so amenable to anything that's going to make them feel better. And I feel like a lot of times when you interview adults just get jaded and tired and stubborn. They don't want to change their behaviors, they don't want to change the condition that they're in, they don't even really want to be interviewed by you. Sometimes they're annoyed that you're asking them all these questions. Children, you ask them like, and this is just my experience from the week that I had, but every time we interviewed them, they were just so open to answering questions, and they really wanted to share their story. They wanted to get better. They wanted to, you know, follow any directions, make changes, take the medications just so they could go back to living their normal life. So it was all to say, it was a very, very pleasant week. I really enjoyed pediatric psychiatry. I've also just been like uber exhausted ever since I started psych. I don't know if it's the hour-plus commute going one direction, or if it's not only like the sleep, but also just like the mental and emotional aspect of being in a psychiatric hospital that's taking a toll. But I literally feel like half a zombie for these last 3 weeks, especially this week. But overall, really like psych.